Boy, do we have a video today, ladies and gentlemen. By the time you are watching this video, unfortunately, Highguard is going to be rest in peace. Highguard is officially canned, and we are going to see exactly what had happened to get to that point. We are today reacting to a video by... hang on a second, sorry. Today we are reacting to a video by the one, the only Mujin, right here. You guys can see that. And it is called How to Butcher Your Entire Game Studio in Under 45 Days. Highguard's disastrous and confusing story. So we are going to react to this today, and we're going to see exactly what went down. Sorry, I just was checking to make sure everything was good over there. But enough sidetracking for today. We're going to crack open a cold one. And by cold one, I mean a mellow yellow right here. I don't know why I was trying to cut that out. So, if you are watching along, go ahead and crack open your fair drink of choice. Doesn't matter what it is. And cheers to you. And we are going to get right into the video. So, let us get going.
$1 million.
Damn.
That's how much it costs to have a game trailer be featured to the millions of people watching the yearly Game Awards ceremony.
Damn. That's a lot of money to be featured on the Game Awards. But to be fair, it is a pretty big event. But even then, there's got to be more information to that. But yeah, that's a lot of money.
However, during the final game reveal of 2025's award show, usually the moment everyone is waiting for...
By the way, I did a live stream of the Game Awards 2025, which the YouTube bots just absolutely shat all over that. Like, hey, this is copyright, this is copyright. Even the Mario Galaxy tiny bit of trailer that was there, it got copyrighted, like, hey, this is copyrighted content. Yeah, I'm reacting to it, so what the hell do you want? But yeah, it's in that regard, I might move that reaction video over. I don't even know if I still have the full thing, I'll be honest. But it is going to be heavily edited. And I do apologize about that, but that's to appease the copyright bots. Anyway, we're getting sidetracked. We're going to move on.
We'd see the showrunner preparing us to witness a new revolutionary multiplayer game made by an independent, self-published studio. And you know what? He wasn't exaggerating. In fact, the game was so revolutionary that it managed to get
overwhelmingly negative, 1,863 reviews. Damn. That is a lot of negative.
Bombarded by negative reviews from the moment it launched. Proceeded to lose over 90% of its player base within less than a week after launch. Fired 80% of its staff in barely 2 weeks after launch. And shut down the entire studio as well as...
Yep. This was the tweet that I saw like a day or two ago that led to this. Highguard's final update arriving soon. Thank you for playing with us. Today we're sharing difficult news. We have made a decision to permanently shut down Highguard on March 12th. Launched more 2 million players in the Highguard's world. Shared feedback, created content, and many believed in what we were building. For that, we are deeply grateful. I did do a stream of that, where I'll admit I wasn't exactly giving the game full due credit, but as I was playing it off on my own, it actually ended up being a decent game. It's a decent game. I will give it that. That does not mean it's good, but I just have to clarify that because some people might just take that and then ride with it, so whatever. So I have to dispel that as well. But as we can see right here, Highguard is going to be resting in peace very, very soon, much like a certain other game. So anyway, we are going to move on and see what he is talking about today.
The game itself in less than 45 days after launch. The story of Highguard is one of utter mismanagement, blatant lies about its independent status, and uncontrollable hubris that spanned over half a decade of development. I mean, it was such a disaster that it most likely burned through tens of millions of dollars of funding, with some even theorizing that the total amount could have been over 200 million. So how did these developers that worked on nothing but industry-defining blockbusters over the years fail so miserably? And why did one of the most influential figures in gaming decide to stake his entire reputation all for the sake of peddling Highguard harder than any other game in his career? Well, as you might expect, the story is very messy and has a lot of details. So, without further ado, Let's do this.
Let's find out.
All right, so to really understand the disaster of Highguard, we actually have to go all the way back to 1995 when the Electronic Entertainment Expo, otherwise known as E3, would launch. Back then, video games were nowhere near close to how big they are today. And this expo...
Yeah, I remember quite a few E3s back in my day when I was a kid. Like, that I guarantee was the golden age of gaming. Like, yeah, it's like a lot of stuff was coming out that was really good. So I think I'm not the only one that's going to say that the E3 era kind of really was the golden era of gaming. I don't know why I was sliding back and forth on that, but we are going to move on.
It was mostly used to showcase to publishers and, well, business people certain aspects of the video game industry. Throughout the years that followed, though, gaming would start to become more and more profitable and mainstream. E3 would benefit from this directly, and it would become the biggest video game related event every single year in parallel to its European counterpart, which was Gamescom. It would consistently be held in the summer of every year, more specifically in the month of June. One of the biggest highlights of E3 was during the peak of the console wars, when you had PlayStation and Xbox rent out spaces a few feet away from each other as they were presenting the next generation
I remember
consoles that would define.
I remember that era, like all sorts of that. It was always a three-way competition of Nintendo, PlayStation, and Xbox. This is just unlocking memories from the past. I almost spilled the melon yellow for a second there. That is going to be relocated right now, so we don't have to deal with a mess. Anyway, let us go.
Define gaming for the next few years. This is what E3 truly was all about. However, as you might know by now, all good things come to an end, and E3 unfortunately was no exception. For many people, the end of E3 was due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but in other ways, one...
Yep, that goddamn virus. I made a couple videos, like, talking about, like, what was happening there, and, like, some of the issues the common folk had to face, but all in all, like, I have been negatively affected by it as well. I haven't caught it. I just want to clarify that right now. I did not catch it, thank God. But there were quite a few many people out there who did catch that terrible virus. Unfortunately, many of them did pass. But all in all, that particular time in, well, recent history now, all in all, that was some serious bullshit. So we are moving on from that. I'm not going to say anything more about that.
Could say that it began prior. From the day this expo was created, the only people who had access to E3 were industry insiders or press. Regular people had no access, but E3 2019 changed that. This allowed 15,000 regular people, non-industry insiders, to buy tickets that were priced at over $100 so that they could, for the first time, join in on the fun. This showed that E3 was looking for more ways to make money. It simply wasn't sustainable to run this based purely on industry insiders. In 2020, the public passes were going to go from 15,000 to 25,000, showing a real need of more ways to make money. However, due to the pandemic, everything came to a halt. Unlike other conventions or events that brought their content online or remote, E3 decided to pretty much kill everything. 2020 was the only year since 1995 that had nothing to do with the Electronic Entertainment Expo. Now look, it's no...
Yeah, and I remember, though, there were a lot of articles about that, and like everyone was just going crazy over that.
Secret. There are certain developers like Nintendo who've been holding their own presentations every single year since 2014.
Oh wait, I did not realize there is going to be a new partner showcase on that day. Great. Well, when can we get official Nintendo Direct? Like, not just a partner showcase.
E3 shutting down in 2020 only made it more clear. Nintendo Direct is not only here to stay, it should be the primary source of Nintendo news. Xbox, who would usually reserve their biggest announcements...
And I remember that. I clicked on that as soon as I could, so... I remember when they first did
for
that.
E3 would take a page out of Nintendo's playbook, inaugurating the Xbox Games Showcase, which has been, since that year, their main way to showcase their biggest announcements. PlayStation would do the exact same thing with the State of Play. In 2021, E3 was still not held physically, but this time they held it remotely with anyone able to join. They were hoping to return to an in-person event by 2022, But those plans were also completely scrapped, and there wasn't even a digital event. It was just like 2020.
Wow.
They were finally meant to bring back E3 physically in 2023, but due to the lack of interest by publishers who had already spent so much making their own shows, they just decided to flat out cancel it. This wasn't just the console makers making their own shows, you had developers making their own shows too, like EA Play, the Ubisoft conference, the Square Enix conference. E3 was essentially made redundant, and the pandemic only accelerated that. I truly think that this was where the world was headed anyway. Problem is though, now you had multiple different conferences to look forward to for different publishers and games, and that in turn left a huge vacuum for any mid-sized or indie-sized studio. Where were they meant to talk about their games? Well, that's where Jeff Keighley comes in.
Hey,
Look, Jeff, when it comes to the video game industry, has been a veteran for a very long time. If you followed any gaming news or events, you must have definitely seen his face at least once, whether it be E3, Gamescom, or any high-profile gaming-related event. His story goes back decades, even though the guy for some reason never ages.
I just realized, yeah, now that he said that, yeah, that dude has not aged much. And then, of course, we have Valve here with us. I think that is Gabe.
He was truly able to put his name on the map when he was the only journalist who was present with Valve as they were launching Half-Life 2. Taking you behind the scenes in a studio, Valve, which is known to be quite secretive to the public. He was also involved in his fair share of controversies like the whole Dorito-gate saga, when he presented the Halo partnership with Mountain Dew and Doritos, which led to this famous picture. Fundamentally though,
I remember when all that was created, Mountain Dew, Doritos, if you will. But yeah, I remember all of that. I also remember the days of Major League Gaming, even though I mostly watched the later half of it because a lot of it was done when I was quite a wee bit smaller. By wee bit smaller, I mean over a foot smaller because I was, just doing my thing, being a kid and all that. But this is just doing something for me. This video was supposed to be about Highguard, but now so far this video has been nothing but unlocking memories of my childhood. Damn. I really just aged myself like that. Anyway, we are moving on from that.
to Jeff, his goal has always been to give gaming what it deserves, and that's to put it on par with other creative avenues, like movies. Both his parents were executives at IMAX. This meant that he constantly attended things like the Oscars. From an early age, he wondered why video games didn't have an equivalent to the Oscars, even though they were a medium that deserved it. In 2014, he would do something ridiculous, insane even, which is creating a new award show for video games with money out of his own pocket. He refused to fundraise it because he said it would be too awkward. He wanted to put his money where his mouth was. The reason why he was insane was because throughout the years, there were many other attempts to do this. These gaming awards, none of them would really stick. But over the years, he did exactly that. It actually stuck and has now become an integral part of video games. However, as E3 shut down, he also saw another opportunity, filling the void that it left. This is when he would launch the Summer Game Fest. It took place in the same month.
Oh. Here's an important day, guys. Write it down. Write it down. I believe this might be when it officially comes out. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he is using the official thing for that. So yeah, just write that date down just in case.
That E3 took place in. It wasn't rocket science. It aimed to fill the exact void left over by E3's cancellation. This meant that Jeff and his production team would not only head the prestigious Game Awards in December, but would also have another event called the Summer Game Fest in the summer. Both of these events would have game reveals, and both of them would be watched by hundreds of thousands of people expecting to see games that will revolutionize the space. When it came to the Game Awards in particular, over the years, it had gotten so successful with such a high, consistent viewership that by 2025, it was reported that if you want to showcase a 3-minute trailer during the awards, it would cost you over $1 million, almost doubling the prices from 2024. And
hang on a second. 6-second trade report still set you back up to $450,000. Damn. And to compare this has been boxed off, I think, for a reason. To compare these against previous rates, Esquire wrote in June 2024 that trailer prices for the main show of that year's Summer Game Fest were as follows: $250,000 for a minute, $350,000 for a minute and a half, $450,000 for 2 minutes, and $550,000 for 2.5 minutes. 2023 Summer GFs were purported to have run the same pricing tiers. You might talk about this, but
Of course, it goes without saying, the most valuable slot in the entire award show is the final game that's shown. In show business, you always save the best for last. You want people to keep watching. And so, this is why it was so shocking to the world that for the Game Awards 2025, with such high prices, the game deemed most valuable in the entire show, the one shown at the end, would be something they had never heard of before: Highguard. And this is how it would be presented. Take a look for yourself.
You know, sometimes our last reveal at the Game Awards is a teaser for something years and years away. But not tonight. Our final world premiere comes from 61 members of the team that built Apex Legends and Titanfall. 4 years ago, the principals founded a new independent studio with the hopes of pushing the shooter genre forward with a new original game. They've done it in complete secrecy, which is even more amazing because the game is very deep into development. The power of independent, self-published studios to push this medium forward is a growing and I think positive theme in our industry. And so tonight, you're not only going to get the announcement of the game, but also your first look at the gameplay. I've played it, and after you see this trailer, I think you're going to want to as well. Welcome to Highguard.
Yeah, 1,200 likes on the video.
Yikes.
17,000 dislikes. Now, I'm not going to show.
And that was just, I think, on that one video. That might not have been on the entire thing, which, if he did use the entire thing, he is crazy for that. But, yeah, I remember live streaming that. And the YouTube bots just absolutely shed all over that. I had to edit, like, a bunch of that stuff. Even the freaking Mario Galaxy trailer got hit from it, which basically means, like, that will just, like, be like, hey, you still have to resolve this copyright claim, even though I was literally reacting to a trailer for the movie that basically marked it, and I can either keep it on there and lose monetization over that, which I'm probably not even going to monetize that specific one anyway, or I cut out that entire section, which is just going to chop everything up, and that's just overall not going to look good. There's already several things where the audio had to be muted, but we're not here to talk about YouTube's bullshit. We're here to talk about the failure of Highguard. And again, may it rest in peace. Let's see what's going on.
The gameplay just yet. You need even more context to understand just how ridiculous everything he said truly was. Prior to this Game Awards show, Jeff would tweet coordinates, okay, on Twitter, just randomly, that would lead you to this.
What the? I ain't never seen that before. What the hell? I guess if somebody built that, but Jesus Christ, that is not something I would ever expect to see in real life. If I drove out to where this was, which he might say which region this is in, but if I drove out to where that was and I saw that, I would probably be shitting a brick on my pants and wondering if when Doom Guy is going to need to friggin' appear, because that's going to be something that needs to be sent back to hell.
Weird statue in the middle of the Mojave Desert.
It's in Mojave, okay. Okay. So yeah, it is in that region, which gets very, very hot. But the question is why, though? And yeah, I guess he'll explain it.
It was an enigma. For weeks, people had no idea what it was. This was the main mystery of the Game Awards, and that game ended up being none other than Divinity, made by Larian Studios, the same people who made Baldur's Gate 3. To many, this was the biggest game of the Game Awards. This was meant to be the final game to be shown, right? The biggest event of that day. Instead, what people got was a game they never heard of before, that looked fairly generic, that didn't really seem to make it clear what it was about. Jeff had hyped this up like a revolutionary title, but it looked like any other game you could find on Steam right now.
Pretty crazy, that's right. Highguard launches in just 7 weeks on PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. It is insanely fun to see, fun to play, as you saw in that trailer. And now it's time for our final award. Last year, Astrobot.
So there it was, the biggest game of this prestigious award show, coming out in 7 weeks and seemingly out of nowhere. So as you would expect, people put on their investigative fedoras to determine where this independent, self-publishing developer, as Jeff described it, came from. And that investigation would only lead to more confusion and suspicion. You see, the studio behind Highguard, Wildlight Entertainment, made their first announcement to the public that they exist back in the beginning of 2023. Here we can see the design and creative director of Wildlight making a tweet saying, "What have I been up to over the last year anyway? Working hard on a game with amazing people who I trust very much. Today we announce Wildlight Entertainment, our new studio. I've never been happier, prouder, and hyped for the game we're working on." As we can see in his Twitter bio, he had worked on Apex Legends, Titanfall 1 and 2, Modern Warfare 2, and Call of Duty World at War, to name a few. So these are very well-regarded games in the industry. This is when the studio would also create its Twitter account saying, "Hello world. We're very excited today to announce our new game studio, Wildlight Entertainment. We've got big dreams of creating an epic shooter IP." And here we can see a Zoom call of 22 different staff members that were working at that studio as early as 2023. It wouldn't even take a day for game publications to start reporting on this. Former Apex Legends Titanfall developers create new studio, Wildlight Entertainment. The studio head would be Chad, someone who was at Respawn Entertainment for around 11 years. He was also the ex-game director for Apex Legends, a game that had, well, made a lot of money. So no wonder many publications were talking about it. You have a bunch of ex-Infinity Ward and ex-Respawn Entertainment developers that made their studios a lot of money, now forming their own. And so far, other than this very limited array of information we have from 2023, the only other thing we knew was from Jeff Keighley himself, calling it a self-published independent studio. Even though their own company LinkedIn page as early as 2023 would say Wildlight Entertainment is a new, fully funded entertainment studio, never really specifying where they got their money from. In fact, what I find interesting is that the website linked on their LinkedIn is wildlightentertainment.com. And when you go there, it says we're under construction.
Fully funded. Yeah, right. Where's the friggin' working website? Come on. Come on, be better than this.
Please check back for an update soon. It's not even wildlight.gg, which actually works.
Okay, here it is.
But this little piece of mismanagement aside, Wildlight was about to face a world of hurt that they could have never predicted after their reveal at the Game Awards. You see, back in 2024, Sony launched...
Yep. There's the Concord incident. Like, even I remember when this was happening as well, and I was just sitting here going, whoa. Like, that's just rough all around. PlayStation shut down new game Concord 2 weeks after launch will refund players. Yikes.
Concord, a multiplayer shooter that was meant to be live service that cost over $400 million, and that was such a disastrous flop. It shut down in under 2 weeks. I mean, it resulted in a studio that Sony had bought to shut down immediately afterwards. This made many people ask the question, who asked for this game to begin with?
Yeah,
Ever since then, whenever someone comes out with a newly announced live service multiplayer game, they're placed under 1,000 times more scrutiny due to this. And while I'm sure the Highguard developers, after working in secrecy for so long, were so excited about the Game Awards reveal, what they could have probably never expected is that people were making direct comparisons of their game to Concord.
Yeah, they were making a lot of comparisons to Concord, which might have also helped that with the downfall of Highguard. And yep, as you can see right here, Concord 2. That has been thrown out around a lot before this game was released. Which, yeah, again, that might have helped like accelerate this failure, but a lot of people were just comparing it to that, and that might not. Well, it obviously did not help the situation, but yeah, that's just rough to hear.
The worst thing you can ever hope to happen in this day and age. Based on this uninspired generic gameplay they showed during the Game Awards, even with Jeff's insane hype towards it, it seemed like it was going to be nothing more than a Concord 2.0, any developer's worst nightmare. But you know what didn't help at all? Highguard's social media page would tweet almost immediately after the trailer would come out during the Game Awards, saying, "What a night! We'd like to extend a big thank you to Jeff Keighley and the Game Awards. We have so much in store for you when the game launches on January 26th, and can't wait to welcome everyone into the world of Highguard. We'll see you next year, Wardens." Okay, this is a post you would expect them to make after the big reveal, sure. You know what else you would expect though? Them continuing to tweet up until release day. Except they didn't.
Oof.
They literally disappeared. To the point where many gaming publications, including Forbes, would start making articles about how they went MIA right after the Game Awards.
Yikes.
No new videos on their YouTube page, no new tweets on their Twitter account, nothing. Radio silence, and the game was meant to come out 3 weeks from then. This article was written on January 6th. The game was going to come out in 20 days. 6 days later, Paul Tassi from Forbes would write another article on January 12th titled "The Highguard Mystery. 2 weeks to launch in complete silence." Now look, to be fair, this could have been a genius marketing move. Everyone was talking about this game, saying how they probably closed down or declared bankruptcy right before launch.
Yeah, which, like, that, of course, was going in a negative direction, but something that a lot of people don't understand, I'm just going to pause, just talk about that. Word of mouth is very powerful. Okay, just to put it in context, like, some other people would say, like, oh, you need more than just that. You need, like, oh, you need, like, blah, blah, blah. You need search engine optimization. You need some advertising. You need to pay money for that. I'm going to say it again. Word of mouth is one of the most, if not the most, underrated and powerful things you can have on your side. One of the most powerful, if not the most powerful. A lot of people underestimate word of mouth, but a lot of successful businesses also started with just purely word of mouth. But anyway, enough about that sidetrack. We're moving on.
However, in my opinion, you'd be naive to think that there's no such thing as bad publicity all the time. No, there are exceptions. This isn't the Wolf of Wall Street. When your game is being called by so many people Concord 2, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy unless you're there to stop it. Highguard wasn't there to stop it. In fact, a new theory is popping up now, the fact that they weren't even going to release anymore. And just as you thought that things couldn't get worse so shortly before the game was meant to launch, things got even weirder. The senior writer of Gaming and Tech at VentureBeat, Imran Khan, would come out with the news. Highguard did not pay a single penny to be featured in the most valuable spot in the Game Awards spotlight.
What? What? You're what? What? What the fuck? Okay, so now I had to get the meme out of the way because this is the first I've even heard of that. But like stuff you usually have to pay over $1 million for, and they get the most important spot for free. What? What is this? What is this bull I'm listening to? Anyway, let's get into the details, shall we? Because I'm shocked on that.
That's right. The same Game Awards that charges $1 million for 3 minutes gave its most valuable spot during the entire show for free.
What
On
the
January
hell, man?
17th, 2026, 9 days before the game was meant to come out, Forbes would also confirm this, citing 2 separate sources that reached out, confirming, yes, they didn't pay a single penny. Jeff just really liked the game and offered it to them. So there we were, 9 days away from release, and this bombshell dropped. Is this Concord 2.0? Did they go bankrupt before the game even releases? And why the hell did Jeff give his most popular spot in the show to this very generic looking game? The gaming community was truly baffled at something that had never really occurred before. And just as the discourse was running rampant on every piece of social media you can imagine, something completely unexpected ended up happening. And that's Highguard finally breaking their silence barely 3 days before release.
Talk about kind of close.
On January 22nd, 2026, Jeff Keighley would tweet, "Just 4 days until the launch of Highguard on Monday on Steam and consoles." Bear in mind, up until this point, Highguard had said nothing since the Game Awards reveal. Jeff was single-handedly carrying this game's entire marketing, and many of the comments are pretty much saying this. Paul Tassi, the same guy who wrote those Forbes articles, would literally say, "Have you heard anything? Like, is the developer still here?"
Yeah, like what's going on? Give us a scoop. Give us a scoop.
Did they not go bankrupt?
Excuse
And
me.
it would only be on January 23rd, 2026 that Highguard would finally make some sort of social media announcement. 3 days before their release, saying, "Tune in on Monday, January 26th at 10 a.m. PT for the Highguard launch showcase. Here, we'll share an in-depth look at Highguard direct from the studio, featuring a full gameplay deep dive, year one plans, and much more." As you can imagine, many of the comments were
Oh, bro, finally remember the password. Oh my god, that is hilarious. Honestly, respect not going dark all the way to launch. Not overhyping, just simply gonna let the gameplay speak for itself. Okay. Do you need... Oh my god. These comments... McDonald's is hiring. Oh my god. These two right here. Like, this post and this comment. These two comments right here. My god, are they hilarious. Especially this one, McDonald's. Oh, you finally remember the password, bro, huh? So you choose to show another Tox releases. You don't know McDonald's is hiring. Oh my god, just absolute shit being pissed on them. Oh my god, that is hilarious. These are absolute memes, and I am all for that.
roasting them, grilling them, with some
They're being... Oh, he not low-key cooking. They being cooked. Insane marketing strategy. Okay, you have a point, but I don't think this is going to go in direction... I don't think this went in the direction any of us were thinking this was
acknowledging that this might have just been a very good marketing strategy. The Highguard account would then begin a countdown, posting every day up until release, saying 1 day remains.
That... I'm just going to say this right here. That picture right here, like this one right here, that is tight as fuck. That is insane. That actually looks good.
And you know what? Looking at some of these 420 replies, there was some excitement brewing. You know, people were very curious to see why was Jeff talking about this game so much. And God, talking about it was an understatement. The guy couldn't stop talking as if they held his family hostage. On January 23rd, he would just tweet this image randomly saying, Highguard, January 26th at 10 a.m. PST, signaling when it would release. Someone in the replies would say, thanks, Jeff, to which Jeff would say, see you online. It's a special one. The next day, he'd post a badge saying, I first went hands-on last summer and had so much fun with Highguard. Now it's your turn on Monday. Curious what everyone thinks. On that same day, he would post a GIF saying, in 48 hours, I'll be accepting your apologies.
Oh, this is quite the meme right here. That is such a quote from Jurassic Park. 48 hours, I'll be accepting your apologies. And oh boy, as we could clearly obvious from the title, just like Jurassic Park, it did not go well at all.
So when Highguard comes out, on January 26th, when the game would come out, he'd post a screen cap of a Polygon article. The title was, Highguard isn't dead on arrival. In fact, after 4 hours, I'm convinced it's one of the best new shooters in years. This didn't really mean much though, because Polygon thought Dragon Age the Veilguard was actually good, along with Concord. 1 minute later, after that Polygon post, he would make another post with 4 different images of the game saying screenshots from Highguard.
All those go... I'm just going to say right here, like, especially these two right here, this one that just goes hard. Like, and that one just, like, that one's also good looking. That one's okay, showing more gameplay. All of them under steed, very nice. This one right here, especially, like the other one, that goes hard.
Now live and free. Look, I think you get the point I'm trying to make here. This guy was tweeting and talking about this game more than their official account. And when I say this guy, I mean one of, if not the most influential voice in video gaming. For some reason, he decided to stake his entire reputation on this game being a success, being fun, being good. So much so that he gave it his most valuable spot in his show. At this point, there was 3 possibilities. He had a financial stake in this game, his family was being held hostage by Highguard devs, or he just genuinely wanted to help.
Wow. Like I can see where the thing is going, but that just...
Regardless of those
My
possibilities, though, he just staked his entire reputation on this game, and that meant something. Some of the biggest streamers and content creators would check out this game as soon as it would release. Yes, of course, some would be sponsored. That was Highguard's social media strategy, similarly to Apex Legends. We'll get more into that later. But let's not pretend that they wouldn't have played it anyway, because, God...
Oh god, that is Ninja. I have not seen anything from him in forever. Like, I remember a lot about Ninja and like all the stuff around it as well. But I've not seen any official thing from Ninja for a while.
The curiosity would kill you. Why is this guy who's so influential in the video game industry staking everything for it? It must be good, right? Well, actually, it was... dude, it was fucking mid. The trailer turned out to actually do it a lot of justice. It was generic as hell. Jeff's efforts would make it so that the game had 100,000 concurrent players on release. That's a crazy number. However, even Jeff's endless marketing wouldn't prove good enough if your game just doesn't cut it, and it didn't. The player count would fall off very quickly. Almost a day after the game would come out, Jeff would tweet, "Thoughts on Highguard so far?" This...
And as I'm just saying, bro, just is this like, bruh.
Tweet has over 7.5 million views, 5,900 replies. It was safe to say that he didn't really get the response he was looking for. I'm sure he was hoping for, "Jeff, you're right."
Oh my god. Oh my god, that is quite a meme right there. Oh, that is hilarious. That is hilarity. That is comedy right there. Just mean what absolute ass. Oh my god. And this is from Nick. Oh my god, you absolute crazy SOB. That is quite the meme. That's the meme. I might even go on and let me say that might be meme of the year right now. Jesus. We need to put that on a shirt right now. Oh, sorry. Yeah, seriously. We need to put this on a shirt because that's just funny.
Hey, sorry, you proved me wrong, but instead he got the absolute opposite. And of course, one of the biggest questions being asked at the time was, why did he shill this game so damn hard knowing that it's nothing special? Someone would at Jeff saying, "Hey Jeff, I was wondering if you financially backed Highguard during development or own some percentage of the company. Obviously you don't have to answer, just curious if you have any incentive with Wildlight Entertainment if they hit certain earning thresholds." To which he would reply with, "Lol, absolutely not." This meant that the 3 possibilities I listed earlier now were down to 2. Either Highguard developers held his family hostage or he genuinely was just trying to help. Well, as I mentioned, even his help wouldn't be enough if the game wasn't up to par. On Steam, the game would open up with overwhelmingly negative reviews, with only 17% of them being positive. The main complaints were poor performance, uninspired art direction, and just tedious game.
And yeah, I've seen a lot of those reviews as well. And I'll admit, they might have had a point with that. Like a lot of people were saying, like, "Oh, this is just basically repeats," and all that. But yeah, they might have indeed had a point, and I can kind of see, like, as I was playing, I'm like seeing going, like, I've seen a couple like Apex videos, like mostly around VTubing, but like I can see like where they mean like, "Oh, this is just a repeat. This is a repeat." Like, yeah, move it on.
Gameplay. Look, if I had to explain to you the purpose of a game, like let's say Call of Duty or Apex Legends, it would take me 10 seconds. Like for example, in Apex Legends you have multiple operators, each with different abilities. You land on a big map and your goal is to loot gear to survive, hunting down other players and being the last team to live. Done. Yeah, well, just to explain the gameplay loop of Highguard, GameSpot made a YouTube short. This was them trying to explain it as fast and simply as possible. You want to know how long the short is? 1 minute, 48 seconds. They needed almost 2 minutes to explain to you the gameplay loop of Highguard. That already says a lot to the complexity and tediousness of this game.
Hang on a second. I might honestly... I might look at that as well. I don't know if I'm gonna make a video on it, but I might look at that in my free time as well.
Look, overall, it doesn't take a genius to understand from their trailer. You had multiple wardens, characters you could play with different abilities. You and your team would also vote on a base. There was multiple types of bases that you could start with. The whole point of this game was to fortify your base and attack the other base. You had to find a sword on a map which would allow you to destroy the shield of the enemy base, and then you'd be the attacker, they'd be the defender. And in order to win, you'd have to
Usual
destroy
stuff.
multiple things in that base of theirs, their generators, their power, etc., etc. That's it really in an utter nutshell. Now look, in theory, this might sound fun, but there were some things that just didn't really make much sense that really added to the tediousness. This map was absolutely massive, and
yeah,
yet it was only 3v3. That to many people didn't make much sense. These aspects of tediousness, as well as uninspired gun gameplay, coupled with the fact that everything looked generic, a McDonald's type of art direction, as you might say, like as if you bought a bunch of different assets from a marketplace, gave the impression to many people that this was some sort of a Frankenstein game. Like they just
And yeah, I can kind of see that as like overall as the weeks when it was released went on, like I can kind of understand that now. Like it has like the fast pace of Apex and the base protection and like rating of like from a whole lot of other games as well. So I can kind of see where that term would come from in regards to Highguard.
took a bunch of different things that developed over a couple of years and just shipped it together just to get something out for people to play. And even though the game was free, the game was bleeding players like it had been struck in an artery. As of now, even game journalists found this game to be lacking, uninspiring, giving it a 63 out of 100 Metacritic score, but the real pain came from the players, 2.6 out of 10 from almost 300 user ratings. Steam currently has over 30,000 reviews, and it's sitting on mixed, with only 46% of them having something positive to say. The day after release, Jeff would acknowledge that thing.
Opening X this morning. Oh, that is quite the meme right there.
Weren't going that well for him. He'd jokingly say, opening X this morning, while linking an image of Flynn Rider from Tangled surrounded by many different swords. This tweet would again gain a lot of exposure. 5 million views, 47,000 likes, 2,000 replies.
Oh, yeah,
And again, as you might imagine, a lot of them were not
Oh, come on, bro. Do I have to censor the cheeks? Come on. Literally Kermit
positive.
cheeks right there.
Many people in the
Jesus
industry
Christ.
would take notice of this, and some would choose to speak out against it. You'd have the vice president.
I mean, the meme itself on Twitter isn't censored, so I might not even bother with that. But literally, as the meme said, absolute ass. Literally.
President and co-founder of Epic Games say it's downright horrible, referring to all the hate this new game was getting, especially a free game from a new studio.
We spotted Big Boss right here. What does he
It's
have
so
to say?
sad. This is a hobby for people they should approach with joy, not hatred. Of course, many of
And I just realized on this picture as well, that is tight as fuck on that profile picture of Big Boss. That honestly goes hard.
these 200 replies would not have positive things to say. One of the tweets on this topic that will get the most attention would be from Sven Vinke, the studio head of Larian, the creators behind Baldur's Gate 3, saying, I don't like people shitting on things others have created. Putting something out into the world makes you vulnerable, and that alone deserves respect, even if you dislike the creation. It's easy to destroy things, it's a lot harder to build them. The best critics understand this. Even when they're being critical, they do their best not to be hurtful.
Truth. That's just pure truth right there. Like, literally, like, oh, you're gonna make something for the world, like, and put it out there. Like, even for me putting these videos out here, like, even though they might not get a lot of traffic at the start, that is still putting work out there. Even then, like, with something that just seems, like, easy to do, there's always stuff going on behind the scenes. There's always something, it's harder than it looks. I will admit, like, YouTube is harder than it looks. And, like, just like anything else, there's a lot of harder stuff out there that's a lot harder than this ever will be. And yeah, it's harder to build them. The best critics understand this, yeah, if they're actually good critics. Even when doing critical, they do their best not to be hurtful. Because, yeah, you're supposed to learn from the criticism. If the criticism is just I don't like this because of blah, 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 and like just like an ongoing thing of repeat and like just like minuscule issues that probably aren't even issues, like at that point the criticism has lost its purpose, and that's just insulting. And I'm not gonna sugarcoat a lot of stuff as well. Like, I've received some form of critical complaints as well. Like, I've taken a lot of criticism as well. A lot of it helped build me into the man that I am today. But then, of course, you have the just one occasional thing where it's not even a criticism. It's just like talking shit in general about you. And I don't do that shit.
Again, as you might expect, the top replies, the most liked ones at least.
Sorry, I took that kind of people. Oh my god. I'm not finished. I'm not gonna finish saying that. And then of course there's this fucking post here, which I'm not even gonna go into any detail about. This one, absolutely hilarious. I'm not gonna finish saying it though. This one, I'm not even going to say anything about that.
Were not in agreement with him. In just one day, Highguard would lose half its player count.
Yikes.
Another day would pass by, they would lose yet another 50% of their player count. It seemed like with every passing day, thousands of players were leaving. But hey, it seemed like they weren't going to let that get in the way of their plans. Shortly after the game would come out, they would tweet, "Here's a look at the Highguard year."
Excuse me. That just reminds me about something else as well. Hang on a second. That I actually want to look at something here real quickly. Because for that game to lose that much player base that fast, like, what is going on?
2 hours later.
But yeah, like, even, like, I was just trying to, like, compare it to another game that I know, like, had, like, died down quite a bit. I guarantee you that game is still more popular than this one was. But yeah, I'm just gonna go back real quick. But yeah, losing that much that fast. Oh, even for me, that's painful to watch.
Get in the way of their plans. Shortly after the game would come out, they would tweet, "Here's a look at the Highguard Year 1 game plan. Episode 2 arrives in 2 weeks. Each episode is 2 months long. Content shown is free for all players." And they would have plans up until December 2026. Every 2 months, you'd have a new warden, a new character to play. Every 4 months, you'd have a new map. Ranked mode was coming soon. You'd have new weapons, new raid tools, new limited time game modes. I mean, it seemed like they had things figured out. It seemed like they were here for the long run, regardless if players were leaving or not. It also seemed like they were very open for feedback and weren't afraid to try new things. On January 30th, the #1 marketer of this game, Jeff Keighley, would tweet out, "Highguard has added a 5v5 raid mode to the game."
Actual #1 marketer. More marketer than their marketing department.
Playable today. Now, did that help with player retention? Yes, a few thousands would play, realize that the game just wasn't for them, like, definitively, and then it would proceed to lose many more players, reaching below 10,000 on the 3rd of February, and only dwindling more since then. By February 12th, the game would be down to 3,100 players on Steam, and with every passing day, they kept losing hundreds more. Even with their 1-year planning strategy and their willingness to accept feedback, it seemed like the Conquer 2 prophecy was coming true no matter how hard they tried to fight it.
Yep.
This would be directly confirmed to us because in barely just 2 weeks after the launch of the game, the majority, not just a small chunk, the majority of the employees working at Wildlight Entertainment would get laid off.
Yep.
On February 12th, 2026, when the game...
That's quite a profile picture, by the way. I could develop a Wildlight Entertainment seemingly laid off most of its staff. I've also heard about that. It's never good when people lose jobs like that, but yeah. But this is just yikes all around. Also, on a more positive note, that picture still goes hard as fuck.
The game was down to a mere 3,000 players on Steam and no doubt a few thousand on consoles as well. The Twitter account Shinobi602 would tweet out, "Highguard developer Wildlight Entertainment has seemingly laid off most of its staff," quoting a LinkedIn post from an employee, in which they said, "Unfortunately, along with most of the team at Wildlight, I was laid off today." The LinkedIn post would go deeper, saying, "This one really stings as there was a lot of unreleased content I was really looking forward to that I and others designed for Highguard." This person in particular was a senior level designer with 7 years of experience in the AAA game space. It has now been 3 weeks, and as far as I could tell from his profile, he's still looking for a job. Around the same time, another employee would make a Twitter article titled, "Reflecting on shipping my first game, Highguard." This post would prove to be a disaster, The developer in question would get brigaded and bombarded with some very harsh words, turning a very bad situation even uglier. And it would mainly be due to a couple of paragraphs that I'll read out to you and, well, you can make up your own mind. He'd say that the game had unbiased internal pre-reveal feedback, and it was...
Okay. Let's just take a quick look at this while he's talking about this. The day leading to the Game Awards 2025 was among the most exciting of my life. After 2.5 years of passionately working on Highguard, we were ready to reveal it to the world. The future seemed bright. Everyone I knew who had any connection to the team or project had the same positive sentiments. He wrote that, adding that unbiased internal pre-reveal feedback was quite positive, and when it was negative, it was constructive and often actionable. But then the trailer came out, and it was all downhill from there. Sobel added. Content creators love to point out the bias in folks who give positive previews after being flown out for an event, but ignore the fact that when their native leading content gets 10 times again from the positive, they've got just as much incentive to lean into a disingenuous direction, whether consciously or not. The hate started immediately. In addition to dogpiling on the trailer, I personally came under fire due to my naivete on Twitter, which almost all of my now former coworkers learned to avoid during their previous game launches, he explained. After setting my Twitter account to private to protect my sanity, understandable, many content creators made videos and posts about me and my cowardice, amassing millions of views, inadvertently sending hundreds of aiming gamers into my replies. They laughed at me for being proud of the game, told me to get out the McDonald's applications, yikes, and mocked me for listing having autism in my bio. Hang on a second. Which this game would be woke trash. All this was very emotionally taxing. Okay. There's quite a few opinions I have about this as well. You know, it just also goes to show that, like, even for something like this, like, even when, like, oh, this is something that looked really good, and to be fair, it was. There's still just some people out there that it doesn't matter what's going on. It could be the best thing in the world, could be shit hitting the fan bad, could be worse than that, which, you know, if it's worse than that, all hell was about to break loose. Doesn't matter. There is always some poor guy with nothing to do in his life, literally, that just absolutely trashes on other people for absolutely no reason. There are people like that. I would know. I have encountered some of those people like that before. And just all in all, I've also learned to, like, just, like, let some of this, like, go through me. Like, if they're, like, trying to get, oh, you're just, like, you're fat, blah, 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 like, just in general insult me. Most of the time, I've learned to just have it go in one ear and out the other. Sort of to filter out, so to say. Now, some stuff is harder hitting, and that does stick with me. But, like, just, like, absolutely just, like, shitting on people. Like, obviously, like, it all went downhill, but in my opinion, having autism in my bio. Now, I'm not going to look at the bio right now, simply because that's not the purpose of the video, but if he does have it listed, like, whether or not it's true or not, like, I've been mocked for a lot of things. Like, I've also had to be bullied and stuff. Like, I personally do not care if this is true or not. Like I said, there's always somebody out there who just, like, it just seems like they talk shit. And it often leads to nowhere. But another thing that a lot of people have to understand is, like, yes, there are some people out there that are genuinely having bad days and they just need someone to filter to. Like, or just get all of it out on. It's not healthy either way. But, like, you know, like, it's always worse to bottle it up, I feel, than to just let it all out. But you shouldn't let it hurt the other person in the process. Like, if I, like, say if I, like, just was, like, balling up something and, like, all of a sudden that busted, and I had to filter out to, like, you guys or one of my family members, one of my friends, like, I'm just, like, the type of guy that, like, takes everything very seriously, very carefully. But more often than not, I don't hurt people. I don't like doing that stuff. Like, I'm against bullying all the way, and like all the other stuff like that. Like basically, like the fact that a lot of these developers were experiencing that, like it gives you the feel for them definitely. But like one thing I understand, there's always somebody that's gonna have a worse day than you, even though your day might truly be worse than theirs. So to say, just what I'm trying to say is, and I've gone on far too long. I apologize. Don't let it get to you. Like, if you like let it get to you and bottle it up, that's gonna cause some stuff on you, and it might not feel like it that way, but eventually that will cause some damage. And like it has some terrible things that happen just because of that as well. But if you just don't let it get to you, because most of the time, whenever people are like dumb and like this, like as what has been described, most of the time, it's just them needing to just get frustrations out on somebody or something. Now, quite frankly, for me, if you're like trying to, oh, I need to get my frustration out on something, like just go to the gym, go on a run, hit up a punching bag, which I might actually do it when I go to the gym eventually next time. But I'm done with my tangent on that, and that's all I'm going to ever say about that matter. We are moving on.
Was quite positive. When it was negative, it was constructive and often actionable, indicating that there was, as far as they were concerned, nothing wrong with the game. He'd then continue, but then the trailer came out, and it was all downhill from there. Content creators love to point out the bias in folks who give positive reviews after being flown out for an event, but ignore the fact that when their negative-leaning content gets 10 times the engagement of the positive, they've got just as much incentive to lean into a disingenuous direction, whether consciously or not. The hate started immediately. In addition to dogpiling on the trailer, I personally came under fire due to my naivete on Twitter, which almost all of my now former coworkers had learned to avoid during their previous game launches, he explained. After setting my Twitter account to private to protect my sanity, many content creators made videos and posts about me and my cowardice, amassing millions of views and inadvertently sending hundreds of angry gamers into my replies. They laughed at me for being proud of the game, told me to get out the McDonald's applications, and mocked me for listing having autism in my bio, which they seemed to think was evidence the game would be woke trash. All of this was...
Also, just one more thing in regards to just what he said as well. Like, having autism in my bio, which they seemed to think was evidence the game would be woke trash. How does having autism lead to something being woke trash, or just being a woke thing in general? How? How would that make any sort of sense? That doesn't make sense to me. And I myself am on the autism spectrum. I've literally been diagnosed for it since I was a wee little kid. If within the first few years of my life, I was diagnosed with it, and it's just been something that I've had to struggle through and work with all my life. Like, my mom, if she was here right now, would tell the stories about that, like what I had to overcome. And I know some of those stories in the back of my, like sometimes in the back of my head now, because she wouldn't stop telling me about them. But yeah, like this section right here, where I am, like right here, like kind of where the red line, where the bar is right now, this entire sentence to me, like, if you just like take it purely from a contextual standpoint, it makes absolutely zero sense. But you know what? Before I just say anything else that's probably going to be stupid, I'm going to move on.
It's very emotionally taxing. He would then acknowledge that there's much constructive criticism about the trailer, marketing, and launch, but also isn't sure if things would have been better had the game not been announced at the Game Awards. He would then say,
It probably would not have even gotten off. Like, if it wasn't announced at the Game Awards, it probably wouldn't even have lasted as long as Concord. Like, and that's something like people, like, that's something like you... I haven't even thought about that until just now, so...
were turned into a joke from minute one, largely due to the false assumptions about $1 million ad placement, which even prominent journalists soon began to state as fact. Within minutes, it was decided this game was dead on arrival, and creators had free rage bait content for a month. Every one of our videos on social media got downvoted to hell.
Yeah, I'll admit I didn't take it for like what it was truly worth when I first started it, even when I like streamed this on Twitch. But even then, like, I was like talking like I was like in awe almost. Like, oh, this game looks good. This is gonna be probably good. Like I like a lot of people fell for that trap, but you know, within minutes decided that this game was deliverable. Creators now had free rage bait content for a month. Like, if I was gonna do rage bait content, it would be fairly obvious. Like, this sentence right here, like, I mean, like, he's talking it like that, and like that's just like from what he's heard from other people saying. But to me, it's just like, I'm just getting confused about that. Like, I understand like rage bait content. Like, if I like, I'll let you guys know right now. If I'm gonna do something that is rage bait content, it will be fairly obvious. Like, but there's also, it's also like a looser definition of what exactly is a rage bait content. So to say, some people would argue that getting rickrolled is just rage baiting. Like, I can kind of understand that, but at the same time, like, most of the time, like, my musician just gets to bed and like sitting going like, I've listened to that song a lot, and I still think it's a really good song. Oh, and I just know what's going on. Comment sections were flooded with copy-paste meme phrases such as Concord 2 and Titanfall 3 died for this. Oh, hang on a second. Oh, hang on. Sorry about the sudden mutes, but I don't like burping in a mic. God, even with that, like I drink a lot. I drink a lot of soda today, but even then, like sometimes it's just whoo. But yeah, many didn't even finish the required tutorial. But yeah, like the first thing I did on that stream, if I remember correctly, was that tutorial. And like it's detailed, like it lets you know like the basic mechanics and stuff, but it still leaves enough information out to where you could figure it out later on your own and like, oh, this is how you're supposed to do it. Like, it's not bad tutorial wise. It's like it shows you the ropes, but doesn't handhold you. It doesn't hold your hand all the way.
Comment sections were flooded with copy-paste meme phrases such as Concord 2 and Titanfall 3 died for this. At launch, we received over 14,000 review bombs from users with less than an hour of playtime. Many didn't even finish the required tutorial. He'd finished this by saying, if this pattern continues, all that will be left are corporations, at least in the multiplayer space. Innovation is on life support. Even if Highguard had a rocky launch, our independent, self-published, dev-led studio full of passionate people just trying to make a fun game with zero AI and zero corporate oversight deserved better than this. We deserved the bare minimum of not having our downfall be gleefully manifested. Barely a couple of days after this article would come out on Twitter, this developer would end up deleting his account. For many of his loudest haters, this article he wrote was nothing more than him playing the victim. Blaming gamers, blaming content creators, blaming pretty much anyone except maybe himself and the game developers that made this.
And that just goes into my point as well. A lot of people just talk shit. Like that. And like he also does have a point to where it shouldn't just be like big multi-billion dollar corporations that just make everything. Like, there needs to be smaller businesses. There needs to be indie developers. There needs to be more competition out there. Because that's how people get better. Like, oh, you saw that? Okay, bet. I'm going to try to one-up you. Like, no, I will one-up you. Like, it just, like, kind of goes in a cycle around there. It can get vicious. Like, I've been in, like, a highly competitive environment before, not only for my job, but also for, like, what I have done before as a musician. It's in general a highly competitive environment, and that competition, if it's done right, it's supposed to drive you. Like, it's supposed to be a drive for competition to be better than the other people. Like, and you like even if like rival, you drive each other. Like, oh, you're gonna be better. Oh, I'm gonna be better than you. And like, oh, bet. It's just a back and forth like that. That's how it's supposed to be. Like Goku and Vegeta's rivalry, to put an example. Sure, like, it's like, might seem like somebody that does not know or understand that anime specifically, it might be, like, rough, just rough in general, or sometimes even. Some people would consider it toxic, but they drive each other to be better. as I'm just listing an anime as example, but there are IRL examples of rivalries where both parties benefited from it. But this right here, like, I understand this was more as more was developed. But I'm just gonna say this right now. Doesn't matter if, like, I could support a company. Like, I wouldn't even say that. Like, I could make something that's not even remotely good, and I would still try my best on that. And yet some people would still find a way to just tear all of that down. But a lot of people in the world are just like that. Now, there's a lot of good people in the world, but there's also a lot of bad ones. And I'm just going to bring the video back.
Game that...
Don't mean to do that. I just need to make sure I didn't click off of you. Like, just in, like, what it says. Like, this, like, all the, like, every, like, this, it just needs to be, like, a big competition where, like, everybody benefits from it. Like, just, like, they try to one-up each other, they learn from each other, and overall it just becomes a really positive experience over time. Sure, it's rough, but a lot of things are like that. But anyways, I'm sorry for that little tangent I've been on. I just got sidetracked with that. We're going to try to finish this.
Pretty much anyone except maybe himself and the game developers that made this game that seemingly no one asked for. On the other hand, though, one can understand his frustration. He had worked for almost 3 years on a game, finally revealed it, and within the span of a month, his whole life fell apart. I don't know what he was hoping to do with this article, but, you know, in the end, as we can see, his account was gone. But that was the least of his worries and the least of many other people's worries when it came to Highguard. That's because barely a day after the mass layoffs would happen, Highguard's website, when you'd go to it, would say, "Site unavailable. This site is currently unavailable. Please contact some email for assistance." Under that, you would see a link to their Discord server and their Twitter profile. Now, the Twitter link worked. The Discord link, on the other hand, did not. In fact, when you would click on it, it would redirect you to a completely different and unrelated Discord server by the name of Highguard Gaming Guild. This had nothing to do with the game. It was just called Highguard. They didn't even bother posting the right server in that link. Additionally, as this was all happening, Highguard couldn't even be found as a YouTube category anymore. Usually when you upload a video of a game, you can very easily label it. Let's say League of Legends or Call of Duty. Highguard had a category, but it was removed. And during all this, someone would ask in the correct Highguard Discord server, what's up with the website being updated? And someone from the Highguard team would say, not sure on the time frame, but basically it needs to be transferred and simplified. Low priority at the moment, reputational damage already done. Now we just need to focus on delivering updates and content to improve. Now look, I already know what you're thinking. Mujin, this is a catastrophe. This is a disaster. What the hell is happening? Oh yeah, it is. You're completely right about that. But here's the thing. It's about to get a million times worse.
Wow.
Remember how Jeff had introduced Highguard's developer? Here are his exact words. This is how he described them.
The power of independent, self-published studios to push the...
Independent, self-published studios. Earlier than this, during this clip, he would also call them independent, indie. Hell, even the employee who had written that article before deleting his account would refer to them the same exact way. Independent, self-published studio. We were under the impression this studio was independent, self-funded. This is what everyone was saying. However, on February 17th, 2026, the same day their website would go down, the games journalist Stefan Totillo would drop a bombshell saying, sources, Tencent secretly funded struggling shooter Highguard. Wildlight Entertainment has said for years it was fully funded, but not shared detail. Stephen's article would go into specifics, saying that it wasn't Tencent, the Chinese entity that directly funded them, it was done through a subsidiary, Timmy, saying sources familiar with the Tencent Wildlight connection said that Tencent's studio group Timmy was the group backing Wildlight. They did not specify to GameFile the reason for the secrecy about the agreement, nor did they share the scale. It's unclear if or when the funding ended and how that relates to last week's layoffs. Wildlight has been technically independent and not part of Timmy. Timmy/Tencent are massive players in gaming, and yes they are, I've mentioned them on this channel already. One can't forget that Tencent Games owns Honor of Kings, the highest grossing mobile game of all time ever in the history of humanity, sitting at $18.6 billion, making even more money than Candy Crush Saga. Let's also not forget that they own 40% of Epic Games as well as 100% of Riot Games, the creators of League of Legends. This of course dealt an even bigger blow to Highguard's already dwindling reputation that was down in the gutter. People felt like they were lying about their whole independent self-published status. And while we don't have a specific number as to how much Tencent could have funded the studio with, some people have been floating around the idea that it was over $200 million. And saying that the studio was technically founded in 2021, announced in 2023, and had its first game launched in 2026, those many years of development could very easily span tens of millions of dollars. But look, Highguard was already in the shitter, okay? They had laid off most of their staff. I mean, come on, this was going to be dead. This was truly going to be Concord 2. The person suffering from this Tencent connection was Jeff Keighley. Now, there was a conspiracy. Maybe Jeff wasn't doing this because his family was held hostage or out of the goodness of his heart. There was again a third possibility in the mix. He was doing this for real financial incentive because Tencent and Jeff Keighley maintain a long-standing strategic partnership focused on expanding the global reach of the Game Awards and other gaming events. Since 2016, this collaboration has facilitated the show's distribution in China. And one can see that the senior vice president of Tencent, Xiaoyi Ma, is sitting on the advisory board of the Game Awards. So by February 19th, Jeff's posts on Twitter, in which he would talk about things unrelated to Highguard, would have questions about this. Are you secretly funded by Tencent? Were you pressured by Tencent to make these posts about Highguard? What's going on exactly? This studio is about to completely close its doors. The game was very mid. You must have been lying that you had fun, right? But still, layoffs aside, Tencent aside, flop and impending doom aside, Highguard would continue to patch and update the game, releasing multiple updates, one on February 19th, as well as one on February 26th, releasing new game modes, new weapon balance patches. And while that was admirable, by February 26th, the game was down to 611 players on Steam. In exactly 1 month since release, the game had gone from 100,000 players to 611 players. The majority had left, and no one was coming back. At this point, the writing was on the wall. It was clear as day. This studio, this game, they weren't going to last. And so on March 3rd, 2026, the official Highguard account would post an article saying, "Highguard's final update arriving soon. Thank you for playing with us." In which they would say, more specifically, "Today we're sharing difficult news. We have made the decision to permanently shut down Highguard on March 12th. Since launch, more than 2 million players stepped into Highguard's world. You shared feedback, created content, and many believed in what we were building. For that, we are deeply grateful." They would then go on to say, "The team is excited to release one final game update to enjoy in the remaining life of the game. We'll be adding a new warden, a new weapon, account level progression, and skill trees. Full patch notes are coming, and we're targeting tonight or tomorrow morning for patch release. From all of us at Wildlight, thank you for playing, for supporting us, and for being part of Highguard's story."
Yep.
This article would have over 8 million views. 4,100 replies. And while some were disappointed or shocked that this had happened,
Oh, come on, Amigo. That's absolutely like poor Pepe for all going to work McDonald's. Asmongo, absolutely, like, don't get me wrong, I enjoy his content, but all in all, this massive event has just been a big yikes.
many were expecting it, maybe even gloating about it. From the get-go, this game was nothing more than a self-fulfilling prophecy of being Concord 2, and they had just shut down in under 2 months. But how did this even happen? How do you get the backing of Jeff Keighley? How do you get the most prestigious slot in the Game Awards show with over 1 million viewers? How do you get financial backing from one of, if not the biggest gaming company in the world? How do you get very talented developers that worked on nothing but blockbuster games and still managed to fail so miserably? Well, now we know. And it's even messier than we could have ever imagined.
Oh.
Respawn Entertainment is a studio owned by EA. Their first breakout hit was Titanfall, releasing in 2014 and garnering many positive reviews. I personally loved playing it when it came out. It was really, really cool and innovative. Some years would pass by, and they would then release Titanfall 2. This game was not only well received for its multiplayer aspect, but it had something the first game didn't, a single-player campaign. And that was absolutely loved by so many. And even though people were expecting them to maybe work on Titanfall 3, they ended up doing something very unexpected. Shadow dropping a game in 2019 with zero marketing, zero announcement, just saying, hey, it's out, called Apex Legends, a battle royale game that garnered a lot of success. The late co-founder of Respawn Entertainment would tweet out, "I'm so overwhelmed right now. Play Apex broke 1 million unique players in under 8 hours." And after the first day would pass by, it would have reached 2.5 million players. This is a game that had zero marketing. To many, this is how a game should launch from now on. All games should launch like this. Like, yo, we just dropped this game, play it. No announcements months prior or years prior. This was genius, and it was free. So it's no surprise that in just a few years, by 2024, this game would have made over $3.4 billion. And again, I really have to emphasize this game had no marketing. Grand Theft Auto 5 had spent $100 million on marketing alone. So of course, everyone in the gaming industry wanted to know, how did you guys do this? How did this surprise launch even come to be? When did you even start working on this game? And this is what one of the developers would say. The way we work is by finding the fun. We don't have a game director who sits down and writes up a 500-page Bible. We're like a really poorly trained dog on a walk. We just kind of sniff around, let's follow our nose wherever we go, whatever's fun, we'll go a bit deeper, rub our nose in it, roll around in that a little bit. So this had happened in mid-2017 after the post-launch support for Titanfall 2 would end. They didn't really know what to do, and they just started messing with prototypes. Some of the developers at the time were interested in making a battle royale game. They would put together some prototypes, and very quickly it became very fun. And the rest is history. And so by the time Apex Legends had made billions of dollars, some people at Respawn felt, you know what? We could do this again, but this time on our own terms, and would leave to create Wildlight Entertainment. In fact, here was their exact reasoning from a Bloomberg article. Back in January 2026, Dusty Welch, the co-founder and CEO of Wildlight Entertainment, would tell Bloomberg, yeah, we left Respawn because things were getting a bit too locked up. There was no more freedom. We couldn't just do whatever we wanted like we used to. However, in this article from the end of February 2026, we'd see another reason. One could say the main reason. It would say, in 2019, they had released Apex Legends, a battle royale shooter in which dozens of players fight across a giant map. The game proved to be a massive success, generating more than $3 billion in revenue. Yet as sales piled up, some of the creatives who'd worked on it felt unhappy that they weren't benefiting enough from the resulting windfall. According to people familiar with what happened, who asked not to be identified discussing non-public information, the Wildlight founders decided to do things differently. One of their plans was to set up a profit-sharing program so that if the studio did deliver another big success, everyone would benefit. An enticing setup that ultimately helped Welch and his co-founders attract many of their former Respawn colleagues to the new company. Armed with a significant amount of funding from Tencent Holdings Ltd, Wildlight began hiring employees and making plans for its first game. The founders knew they wanted to make another multiplayer shooter, but they hoped to avoid the crowded battle royale market. So instead, they looked to Rust, a survival game in which players can raid enemy bases and build their own. They began constructing levels and designing mechanics for what was envisioned as a survival-focused shooter. 2 years into development, the team realized that the design wasn't working, in part because the amount of freedom conflicted with their goals for highly competitive play, according to people familiar with the events. Also, the scope was too big. Still, some parts were salvageable. The base rating aspect of the survival game in particular seemed worth keeping. In January 2024, the team pivoted to what would become Highguard.
So basically what we are learning now is that Highguard could have been a very different game. Probably not even of the same name. Who knows? Like, the amount of theme conflict with the goals being highly competitive play. That just somehow rubs me the wrong way, so to say. I'm just
raid shooter that streamlined many of the survival aspects into a faster, more competitive game. So this is kind of starting to make more sense, right? The idea of why the game felt like you were playing this Frankenstein creation of multiple aspects mashed up together. Look, the dog sniffing phase that Respawn Entertainment used is very important. Let's not forget that Call of Duty Zombies was made by just a few people messing around in the office. But you also need a proper scope. You can't just do whatever you want, however you want, with
Exactly. Yeah, like even if we're just gonna mess around on this, but if you're gonna develop something less like lot more serious, so to say. Like, you need to have a main line. You need to have a focus. Excuse me. But yeah, you just need to keep your main focus. Once that, and then just keep messing around a little bit, but don't stray from focus. And eventually everything should work out.
Limited money. They had also failed to understand what made Rust special. Base rating was intense because of what was at stake. You couldn't rush it down to under an hour. The same feelings wouldn't be there. It would just be tedious. They had essentially made a game with no demographic. If you wanted base building, you'd play Rust. If you wanted Battle Royale, you'd play Apex Legends. One really interesting thing the Bloomberg article would also mention was when asked what they thought went wrong, several former Wildlight developers used the word hubris. A belief by the company's leadership that they could emulate what had worked in the past with Apex Legends. No matter how much the gaming landscape had changed since then, after all, they'd made one of the last decade's biggest hits. This hubris stemmed from the fact that they were so confident this game was good, they were going to shadow drop it again, just like Apex Legends, knowing that the game could hold up for itself. However, after Jeff Keighley had played during their playtest, he approached the development team, he approached the co-founder, who was his friend, and told them, hey, I love the game, I want to highlight it during the Game Awards, since you guys are an independent studio. The co-founder would say he came into the studio and played the game, I think, twice, and he said, guys, can I propose to you? I want to do something that's unique. I want to put it in this spot and kind of do something different and bring this to the world. Welch would say, and that wasn't our plan, but like, are we going to turn down the exposure? Who would turn that down? And then you'd have Chad Grenier chime in too, the ex-creative director of Apex Legends and the head of the studio of Wildlight, saying, so we rushed a trailer together. I wish the reception had been better, but in hindsight we made a trailer to entertain really quickly and didn't show the gameplay loop and was different and unique. They would then take the exact same approach as Apex Legends. No real marketing until release, and then a massive social media campaign with influencers, streamers, content creators, you name it. Problem is though, during the silence and during the time in which people were calling this game Concord 2.0, the morale of the team was hit pretty badly. They couldn't say anything and they were watching people pretty much tear into something they've worked on for 3 years. Barely a month after the game had come out, the layoffs would begin. It would be held online on a Zoom call since the studio worked remotely, and they'd pretty much announce, yeah, the funding was entirely pulled from the studio. The 100-person team had over 80% of it laid off that same day. By the time Eurogamer's report on February 27, 2026 would come out, there were less than 20 people still working at the studio, doing their best to release updates before the eventual shutdown on March 12th. On March 3rd, Highguard would announce to the world that it was shutting down on March 12th, and shortly after that, you would start seeing way more posts posted on LinkedIn from previous workers at Wildlight talking about the fact that this game was shutting down and how, well, they were looking for a job. Saying things like, we swung for the fences in a saturated market and made something genuinely new that we loved to play. Even the studio head, Chad Grenier, would make a post starting it off with, Highguard didn't need to become the next Apex-sized hit to succeed. We weren't chasing that scale. What we needed was a smaller but stable and sustainable player base, and ultimately we weren't able to find it. That's interesting because I would argue a smaller but stable and sustainable player base would be around maybe 2,000 players, a few thousands, let's say. But let's remember that by the time they had reached 2,000 or so players on Steam, they conducted the mass layoffs. That's without counting the players on consoles. So this really begs the question, what was the studio even hoping to achieve? Did they really think they'd have over 10,000 players within a week if it wasn't for the Game Awards? This whole thing reeks of mismanagement and hubris. It's incredible. He would then go on to say how proud he is of the journey of his team and that he had learned a lot throughout all of it. At the same time, though, you'd also find him on Twitter saying something that was very interesting. You see, someone would quote tweet the closure announcement of Highguard, saying, people don't praise failure, but it's the foundation of every success, nothing but love for Wildlight. To which someone would reply with, it's just baffling to me they released the game in such a skeleton state and decided now's the time to add account levels and introduce some sort of skill tree system. It's crazy to see the parallels between this game failing and seeing Marathon come back after so many tests. This is when the studio head, Chad Grenier, would say, when you're out of time and money, you have to release a game with the runway you have available and hope players will stick with you post-launch. Now that definitely didn't give off the same tone that his LinkedIn post did. Hell, I'm even baffled why you would want to even admit this, you know? You had close to 4 years of development, and this was the best you could do? The more we learn about this game, the more we understand this was mismanagement. They were fully funded and got way too confident about that. But development and management issues aside, some people would spark up discussions about the art direction of this game and the missed potential. Many of the employees who worked on this game artistically would start posting much of the work on websites like ArtStation, showcasing it in their portfolio. One thing that people would find is this very interesting character concept, being absolutely baffled as to why this wasn't included in the game's release. Instead,
That actually really does go hard as fuck. That looks really
including
good.
some way more boring designs.
Yeah, why the hell wasn't this in the game? Come on, son.
At the same time, the artist Kasaragul would make a very interesting long post about the art direction of this game and why it was baffling, how none of it really made sense. It didn't mesh well together. Some people also argued that because much of the game's art was outsourced to different studios and people outside of the studio itself, the outsourcing team as well as the art director failed to keep cohesion, which resulted in not just the gameplay itself feeling like some sort of Frankenstein creation, but also its entire art direction. The entire thing was mismanaged to hell from day one. It was a tragedy. And with that, I actually want to mention a quote from Gabe Newell. This is drawn from the article by Jeff Keighley detailing the development of Half-Life 2. The team at Valve wanted Gabe Newell to greenlight Half-Life 2's development. It was actually very hard to do that because their proof of concept just wasn't good enough for him for a while. Of course, there was the argument, well, why can't Gabe just finance it? I mean, come on, like what's stopping him? He has the money for it. And this is when this paragraph comes along, saying, true, but most game developers also aren't in Valve's position, where Newell has enough money to fund a game's development out of his pocket if he so pleases. So is it really fair to hold other developers to the same standards as Valve? Ask Newell this question and he grows agitated. Any developer who bitches about, oh, our publisher cut off our money, or the publisher made us ship the game early, doesn't get it, he says. That's the interesting problem you have to solve as a developer. If you don't, well, you'll be perpetually screwed. But how do you solve the problem? Newell cites the development of Counter-Strike, where a young college kid in Vancouver made a Half-Life add-on as a prime example. You bootstrap, Newell suggests. The Counter-Strike guys didn't have some sugar daddy show up and drop a huge wad of cash in their lap. You have to be creative.
And that's just true for a lot of niches, actually, not just like gaming, but music, movies. And that's something that's Hollywood failing to do. Not a lot of stuff is creative anymore. Which is why I often want to do this more and more, because I want to show my creativity, my individuality. Now, how these videos do might be outside my power, but how I make them, that's entirely on me. And yeah, you have to get really creative, otherwise it's just gonna fall flat on your face and have you land on your ass.
This was said back in 2002, and today in 2026, it could not ring more true. Concord had a sugar daddy. Their name was Sony. $400 million. Look where that got them. The game sucked. Period. You want funding? How about you make a game first, a proof of concept that's actually fun? When it comes to the world leaderboard of any percent speedruns of shutting down after release, Highguard now sits at 4th place behind the Culling 2, Concord, and Crucible at 45 days.
8 days. One live service game. Oh yeah, let's take a look at this from Rooster. 8 days. One live service game shut down in 8 days. For comparison, Kim Kardashian's shortest marriage lasted 72 days. Players with speedruns to do games. World League about 80%. Conling 2 shut down in 8 days. I remember hearing about that. 14 days. Concord, 41 days. The Crucible, 45 days. Highguard, 46 days the day before. Alright. 201 days Rumbleverse. 361 days Babylon's Fall.
The Twitter account Poorly Aged Things would quote tweet Jeff Keighley's GIF saying, in 48 hours I'll be accepting your apologies, saying, I'm sorry, Jeff, to which Jeff would reply with a shocked image of that same grandpa in the GIF. I mean, in the movie itself, he would say this and then he would be proven wrong, so it was very ironic. At least he was playing into the joke. Wow. But some people would be very weird about this and would photograph Jeff on Rodeo Drive in Los Angeles.
Come on. Yeah, yeah, that just goes again to what I say. Some people are just weird like that. Come on. You don't do this. Okay, be better than this, guys. Obviously the man had some bad days. Don't bother him when he's down. Don't kick a man when he's down. Come on. And this is goes to show some people are not beyond shit like this. I would never think to do this. In fact, if I had run into him on the street, I'd be like, "Hey, how's it going?" Like, I would shake his hand. Like, I would talk to him. I, quite frankly, would invite him to get a coffee. Like, I certainly wouldn't do that. Like, if I ran into him, like, wherever I am, I would say hi. Like, just probably chat with him. You know, like, I certainly wouldn't do this shit because I'm better than that. Come on.
Angeles and say that this was him a day after Highguard announced the studio shutting down. I don't know why you got to take a picture of him IRL for this, but what do I expect from people at this point?
Exactly.
Some would even argue that Jeff actually needs to take a level of accountability for the game shutting down. But personally, I think if you have common sense, you'd understand that he actually did them a huge favor here, assuming he genuinely did this out of the goodness of his own heart. The game would have definitely launched with maybe like 10k concurrence instead of 100,000 on PC. Additionally,
True.
2 million people tried it, and the majority didn't leave because the internet made them, okay? Paul Tassi makes a great point here. Marketing can only get you to try a game. It can't get you to stay on the game if it's not fun.
Exactly. That's purely on how the game is developed.
Highguard simply was not fun. It was weird. And at this point, it seems like every year we're seeing yet another disaster story that is similar to Concord, a game that no one asked for, that had a big budget, that had very talented people working on it, and somehow, some way, it was worked on for years without anyone thinking, wait a second, are we really about to
Yeah, just like, hold up, something's not right. Is this gonna be real?
do this? I don't know, man. All I know is that the gaming industry is in a very rough spot right now. It's almost impossible to find a job. AI isn't even to blame for this. Executives have no idea what players actually want, and if they do, they're always late on it. And seeing that they never actually suffer the consequences directly, their employees do, they have no incentive to actually learn from their mistakes. If you want to make games, make
That does beg the question. But I'm not going to go into that.
them. But make something that people want to actually play. And don't ask for sugar daddy money. Make a playable game first, then pitch it, and then get your funding. Otherwise, you'll end up like Concord, like Highguard, and God knows whatever else is going to release soon that will face the same fate. Thank you so much for watching this video until the very end. I really hope you enjoyed it. I love you so much. Platonically, I missed you. Make sure to check out my Stacked page if you want to see exclusive
Okay, and yeah, and the... Oh, hang on a second. We're
content of me with videos, both short and long, yapping, and I'll see you in the next video whenever that is, hopefully soon. Take care, and mwah.
Oh, Lord. Yeah, that is quite a thing to end on right now. Whew. But yeah, there was like a lot to take away on this, like a lot of stuff, a lot of allegations, some true, like I'm not going to go into all those details right now, but that was indeed how to butcher your entire game studio in under 45 days. Like, there was a lot of things, clearly, that could have gone better, but it just didn't. Like, and like how the executives thought this would even fly. Like, that's beyond me, but all in all, this was honestly quite enjoyable, very informative as well. And quite a few memes on the side of that as well, and I hope you guys enjoyed my reaction to it as well. If you want me to react to any more of... if you guys want me to react to any more of Mujin's content as well, then of course you guys know what to do. In the meantime, I'm going to get this out as soon as I can, and it will be out on today, the 12th. So thank you guys once again, and again, the world is obviously crazy out there. There's a lot of weird people out there. You guys stay safe, drink plenty of water, have some good food, and I'll keep on grinding. See you next time, and have the rest of your day. Peace out. Bye-bye.